Right, we've heard a lot of information over the past couple days, and I'm sure it's all very overwhelming. A lot of technical things, a lot of things that will help you on the exam. But at the end of the day, when we're actually creating a product for a farmer, you've got to put all this stuff together into something useful. So that's what I'll talk about briefly here. We do have a whole class just on putting together plans that meet regulatory standards, so we'll talk about that later. All right, so we have kind of this flow chart that we follow, which outlines broadly the nutrient management planning process. And you can see the first step, which is often the most critical step, is collecting data. The quality of the data you collect is going to dictate the quality of the recommendations that you can create and give to people. What data do we need to create a plan? We need property information. So this is at the whole property level. We need the farmer's name, address, and mailing address. Oftentimes you'll have a bunch of different farm addresses which are different from the mailing address. The county, the watershed, how many acres are farmed, and any water that's near the farm. So some stuff you'll get from the farmer directly. A lot of this you can look up using mapping software or online tools. The account ID number is one critical item you have to track down. MBA is very particular that you have correct account ID numbers and you have all of the account ID numbers for the properties that are being farmed. Luckily, we have some easy ways to find this. The harder ways would be to actually get the tax bill or go to the tax office. No one wants to do that. I much prefer, there's 2 online tools you can use. My favorite is this Finder Online tool. At our University of Maryland Agri-Nutrient Management Program website, we have guidance for how to do this. If you don't have our website written down specifically yet, it's go.umd.edu/ANMP for Agri-Nutrient Management Program. That's your quick link to get there. Should be other places within your materials as well. Or if you just search University of Maryland Nutrient Management, it'll come up. Ag Nutrient Management, probably better. Otherwise, I don't know what will come up. Anyway, there's great guidance on how to use this online tool, and you'll see all the account IDs that are there. We have some handy data collection sheets that are fillable online as well. Especially starting out writing plans, it's good to pull these up and use them. What will happen is if you don't use something like this, you'll have to call the farmer back about 100 times because you'll realize
you use something like that.
Exactly. Even if you do use it, sometimes you forget to ask something. So you don't want to annoy the farmers you're working with. Make sure you use these things, and especially starting out. Once you get to writing a lot of plans, you may not need to use something so formal to get all the information you need. But good place to start. Has basic stuff like the name and address, farm name, account ID, streams present, that kind of stuff. And it's helpful to know if they participate in any plan, any kind of programs, cover crop and things like that, so you're prepared for that. All right, so here is the link on our website, basically. This will get you directly there if you go to go.umd.edu/plan-writing-tools. But you'll navigate there quickly on our website. And it's broken into all these chapters. This is the most probably common place when you're writing a plan that you're going to go, is this plan writing tools section of our website. Because it has basically quick links for all the sections that need to be in there. Starting with data collection. So that's where you'll find a lot of these forms. When you expand that, this is what it looks like. All right, so we've got those data collection sheets. We've got the farm level sheet, and then remember you'll need specific field level information. And it's got some other things. Here's, how to find tax account ID numbers. So all this is there. All right, this is an example of what Maryland's Department of Assessments and Taxation, they have the account IDs you can find. And basically you can pull that up and it'll look like this. And it may have a number here. And you'll use that whole number, but there's one more number that you might need to add at the beginning, and that is the county number. Now, just to make it extra confusing, some of them have the county number already as part of this, and some don't. So we've included for you, and in our guidance on the website, is, for that county, that was a Washington County one, it should have a 22 right at the front of what was listed there. So this is just a little thing. You have to have that county code at the beginning of your account ID. Here's the list for all the counties. And just make sure you slap that code at the beginning of the number that you find. All right. Another critical piece of data that you'll need is the farm map. Sometimes farmers will already have an FSA map or a map from something else, and you're welcome to use that. You don't have to start from scratch, but it has to have certain critical information on it. We have some great mapping software available on our website that you can use. You could use Google Earth or something like that as well. You could use, depends on how GIS savvy you are, you can get into some good GIS software. But the main things you need to have are a road name for location, so you can get your bearings straight. Could you find this in the world without, having some background knowledge? You have to have a road name on there. You have to have property boundaries shown. Our software that we have available on the website for mapping already has property boundaries from Maryland's the Department of Taxation Assessment. We already have that built into it, so it'll pull those up automatically for you. It's worth getting the extra technical knowledge to use that, to just have that kind of stuff automatically on your map. So property boundaries, field boundaries need to be there, the names or numbers of the field, the acreage of each field, and any streams need to be drawn on the map. So this is really important to remember the critical items that have to be on a map. I could see something like this coming up on the exam. Again, you're not dictated on what kind of mapping software you use. Anything that shows the details we've mentioned are required is acceptable. Really, even though, technically, regulatory-wise, you could use a hand-drawn map, as long as you had, drawn to scale and stuff like that, you could figure it out. But as a consultant, I don't think that's the kind of service folks should be providing to farmers at this point. We have a lot of technology available to use. So this is an example of what, we have basically kind of developed a lot of resources for this QGIS software, it's called, and we have all the downloads and guidance documents for it. Very similar to ArcGIS. The reason we chose to make a lot of resources through QGIS is that it's open access. It's free. ArcGIS requires an expensive license. It's great though if you have access to it. But we've kind of made all our resources toward this just because it's free, so we knew anyone would be able to download it and use it. Here's an example of what the Carroll County base maps look like that you have. We have elevation contours and everything built in there, so you can use this if you have to use a phosphorus management tool to find the elevation and measure distance to surface water like Brian was showing you. You can do all that here instead of having to drive out to the field with a clinometer and look at the slope. You can just do it all right from your computer, even though driving out to the field might be a little more fun some days. All right, here's an example of kind of a well-made map that we created using our software. I mean, you could do this kind of similar thing, but the nice part is it has these setbacks from the stream. You can see the 10 and 35-foot setbacks already shown on the map. So when you go to fill out your required setbacks sheet that has to be in your plan, it's easy to see which fields require setbacks. Now, it's not perfectly accurate. We always have a little disclaimer that sometimes, it'll pick up a stream that's not actually there. And then the farmer just needs to use their knowledge and you as a consultant to say whether that is actually a body of water that requires a setback. But for the most part, it's pretty accurate. And then you can see how you have field names. They're all unique. You don't want two different fields with the same name on the same property. All unique field identifiers, and you have the acreage of each one there. The property boundaries are the black lines that go around, so you can see where the property is. And then you have the field outlines in another color. So some field information, this is field specific now that you'll need to get. You'll need to have what crops are going to be planted, the yield goals, not just what they wish they could get, but as Brian Harris from MBA, he was explaining, it should be based off actual records, best 3 out of the last 5 years or 60% of whatever data you have. Or if they don't have records, say it's a new field that they got a hold of, or they just haven't been keeping records well up to this point, let them know they need to start. And then sometimes, the web soil survey has some yield information available on it for that, associated map unit. Or you could use some of the USDA, NAS data that's available, any kind of extension yields or things like that, but it has to be a legitimate, it can't be like the corn crop club winners yield, or something like that, where it's going to be off the charts high, but, USDA, university extension kind of yield information, that makes sense for the region. You're not going to want to use Arizona data from Maryland or something when it comes to alfalfa. Make it within reason, but that's acceptable to start. Cropping history. Think about nitrogen mineralization. Did they have legumes growing? That's all going to be figured in. Were organic sources supplied in the last 2 years? Because you have to factor that nitrogen that might become available. The type of application equipment and incorporation, so what kind of tillage are they using? Are they broadcasting nutrients or are they injecting them? And again, the surface water for each field, you need to know if it comes into contact with surface water. And we have a similar field information sheet to help you remember to get all that stuff. All right, this is just showing you how you can find yield goals within Web Soil Survey. Web Soil Survey, as I talked about kind of yesterday, it's a great tool. Not only can you find the dominant map unit, which gives you information about your soil texture, but they also have some cool tools here where you can find vegetative productivity. And you can kind of get the average yield at the bottom. You use the dominant one. And this is telling you basically for this field, this HAB soil, it's hard to see, but just to give you an idea, this HAB soil is the dominant map unit, and it has an estimated yield of 143 bushels. They're all pretty low yields, on Web Soil Survey, so the farmer's going to want to get some real yield data after a while. Alrighty, some other, our next step is to just make sure we have, tissue samples if they've got perennial fruit kind of crops, and soil samples. I won't, go into a lot of detail because Dr. Tor already explained the importance of good quality soil sampling. But you need to have, all fields need to have a good soil sample done. All management units, I should say. Now you can combine fields if they have similar soil type and they're managed the same. So you could apply one soil test to 2 different fields as long as they're managed the same cropping history, same nutrient applications, and similar soil types. All right?
That includes pasture.
Yes. But remember, you've got to have those similarities in management and conditions, soil conditions. So yes, the only thing is you want to make sure you get some of your cores. You know how Dr. Tor showed going around, make sure some of your cores are coming from all of the areas that are included. So you wouldn't want to take all your cores from this one area and apply it to this area over here. Definitely get some of those little subcores that you mix together from all the areas that it would be involved in. Collect tissue samples for orchards. There's specific guidance on timing of that. Ideally, you'll want to time your soil sampling at the same time as your tissue test for those kinds of operations for orchards. So that's kind of a unique situation. Other types of operations, it's not that great to get your soil sample right in the middle of the growing season. But in this case, it's helpful because then you can kind of compare, oh, I've got a lot of this in the tissue, but not a lot in the soil, or vice versa, is actually more common. How long are soil samples good for? 3 years. Yay! 3 years. Excellent. And tissue samples are good for 3 years too. This is where we get into what Brian talked about. Is that FIVP greater than 150, greater than or equal to 150? And then you get into some additional data collection for the phosphorus management tool. So again, some of what Brian talked about, you need your slope, length, and gradient. If you have mapping software, you can do it there. The width of the field buffers. You'll need to know details about tillage practices and timing. You'll have to learn how to run the Russell II, the Revised Universal Soil Loss calculator to find erosion. Okay. And then crop rotations, estimated dates of planting and harvest, all that goes into that Russell II equation to find erosion. Animals are our next part. Do they have animals? And what do they do with the waste? So is manure produced on the farm? If so, you'll need to collect a manure sample for, there's a few little nuances. If they have more than 20 animal units, they need to have an actual sample. MDA created kind of a concession to help smaller farmers that may have less than 20 animal units. They can just use a book value. Just because the cost of the manure analysis is about $40, and if you've only got 2 horses out there or whatever, it can be a kind of a pain. So you can use a book value as long as it exists for the type of animals that you have. And we've gotten some unique kinds of animals, and maybe there's not good book values for that, and they do have to send it out. So you want to sample as close to application as possible. You know, what Craig and also Dr. Tor talked about, those nutrient transformations that can occur as manure is stored in the field, right? So you want to figure out what's the nutrient content right before I'm about to spread it. Because you may way overestimate some stuff if you sample it earlier on. You're going to lose some of that nitrogen, for example. Okay, there is a kind of loophole you could take advantage of, but it's kind of a pain, so I don't know anybody who does this. But you could sample twice a year until you get a baseline, and then it just allows you to sample every other year instead of every year. I don't think that's necessarily worth it, and I'd rather just know my analysis every year. Sample once a year. Organic analysis, good for 1 year. It's different than soil and tissue. You guys got it? Okay, organics, manure analysis, 1 year. And you'll need to find out how much manure is generated annually. So you have to collect some information, figure out what's being collected. We have a nice Excel spreadsheet on our website. I'll show you that in a minute. Here's a data collection sheet, again, to help you make sure you have all the data that you'll need for that spreadsheet. Including, it has some, asks about if they've calibrated their spreader. That's kind of separate. But you really need to know, you can't see this very well, so I'm just going to click forward and talk about it here. You really need to know the whole production period. You need to have a year of generation information in the plan, okay? So you can make it a calendar year if that is an export situation, but typically I'll make it, cover from when they spread the previous year to when they're going to spread this year. So often if there's a spring application, I'll make it go from March 1st through February 28th. So it kind of ends if they're spreading on the first day of application. Anyway, and you may have to do more than one of these sheets, right, to cover 1 year, because maybe somebody has different turnout schedules. or different animal groups at different periods of the year. But when you add all your manure together, it should cover 1 year. So you may just have to add, take 2 of these sheets and add them up. And you have a place to put your livestock groups, the average weight of the animal. If you have something like a, kind of feeder finisher operation for cattle, for example, you're starting off as calves and ending up at finishing weight, you're going to want to use like the average weight over the course of time for this. And then it will automatically calculate animal units for you. You have to figure out the full days confined. Now, our definition of confined here means the animal is in a place where you're collecting manure. So sometimes, you may think, oh, the paddock is outdoors, they're not confined. But if it's a paddock where you're scooping all the manure that's dropped in there, put that as a time confined because you're collecting the manure. And then you could put the days partially confined, the hours per day. If the animal comes in just at night, 8 hours a day they're in. And basically you have all these calculations. Then there's a nice table that's included in this sheet that tells you, some poor student somewhere had to research how much animals poop every day, a bunch of different species. So we have all that data in there for you. And there's gonna be error in this, right? Because it's just, animals are different, there's estimates that you're putting in here, probably going to be at least 25% error either way, But it's the best we've got to estimate, and it's all based off of, good information. The good thing is this can also be done right within Newman software. The newest version has actually a manure generation option in there. And it looks a little crazy, but it's actually pretty easy to click through. There's drop downs and areas to put stuff in. And it automatically pulls a lot of that information in for you, such as the weight of manure. This is the pounds per animal unit per day. So it's the pounds of manure that 1,000 pounds of that animal would produce a day. An animal unit is 1,000 pounds of an animal, right? So many chickens will be an animal unit. Probably one horse is equal to one animal unit, okay? So now we've got all our information about, we've got manure, we've got what's in our soils and our tissues. Now we can develop recommendations. This is the essence of the nutrient management plan, kind of what we've done all this other stuff for, is to give the farmer the amount of nutrients that they need to apply or can safely apply without, expecting to lose a lot of extra nutrients to the environment. They're based on long-term soil fertility research. It's, kind of the best information we've got is what we're basing these off of for our region. Sources of the recommendations, some of this is going to be in your flash drive, I believe, but you've got SFM1, for agronomic crops. EB236 is where all the vegetable recommendations live. There's various info sheets that are out there for some of the minor crops. The good thing is if you use Newman Pro software, it's all already built in. So you don't have to go searching through the sheets and finding the recommendations built into the software. You just select your crop and your yield, and then it pulls it in for you. The Maryland Nutrient Management Manual has recommendations in it. And we have some, like I said, for some minor weird crops that might come up. They're kind of in various places, like the FAQ section of our website, or the recommendations part of the plan writing tools section of our website. Some things to consider when making recommendations. Always be thinking about the organic nitrogen that might become available from past practices. Mainly, you've got your legumes, and so remember that the recommendations that you're seeing are the gross recommendation. It's not factoring in anything that might become available from legumes grown before or from manure, biosolids, other organic applications. Make sure you know which fields are getting commercial fertilizer and which are receiving manure. There's different recommendation sheets that you want to print out for them. When somebody's applying manure, it's not the perfectly balanced source for your crop, right? So maybe they apply it to meet a phosphorus recommendation, and they need to add a little commercial fertilizer, nitrogen, just to bring it up to what the crop needs. And you'll want to provide that kind of information, about what additional fertilizer they might need at the manure rate that they're going to apply. So for fields receiving manure, sometimes incorporation of that manure is going to be required. It's required within 48 hours for them to till the manure in, unless they are a no-till operation, being that they use that as a regular practice on their farm. Hay fields, perennial pasture, that kind of stuff fits that bill. It's a no-till management there. So they don't have to follow this rule. But if they are typically tilling as part of their operation, they need to till in within 48 hours. MDA always does reserve the right to require incorporation under certain situations. They don't do that unless there's a really good reason, but they do they do that sometimes. Okay. Critical part to think of, is the land base available adequate for manure utilization? Do they have enough space to spread all the manure that's being produced there? So if they're using manure, make sure they have enough fields and acreage available to receive manure at that time that the manure is available. We have a sheet called the Manure Utilization and Allocation sheet to help you calculate that. So you'll want to make sure that the rate they are allowed to apply, when you calculate that out across all the fields and acreage, uses up all the manure that's being produced on the farm. That's basically it. And if it doesn't, you just need to write in your cover sheet of your plan where that manure is going to, who it's going to, with the name and contact information. That way, MDA knows it's being handled. You can't just have excess manure and no answer about where it's going. So we have an Excel sheet that looks like this. We basically put in the fields, the acreage, and the rate. Make sure the rate that you use is one that is actually allowed based on the nutrient recommendations for that crop. And it calculates up at the bottom, kind of the manure available for use. This is what you found on your generation sheets. So in this case, this farm's producing 200 tons, but we have a problem here because according to that rate and across those acres, they can only use 190. So they have a 10-ton excess. So what can we do about that? Perhaps there's an additional field that they weren't planning to apply manure to that can accept manure. You could add that field. You could try to see if it could handle a higher rate, if that's appropriate for the crop that's growing there, and they could try to up their rate a little bit. Or you could provide an excess, or a location to export that 10 tons. So there's some options. Or if it's close and you think maybe you overestimated some of the variables in their generation, and they say, I never have extra. I don't know why this is saying I will have extra when I don't. Remember, there's error in all of our estimates. So maybe think, we might have overestimated how much time they're in the barn, or we might have overestimated, So you got to kind of look at this stuff realistically. But yeah. And this is just showing you that this can also be done in the newest version of Newman. You can build in the waste balance right there within the program. So. All right, the last step. Compile, review, and deliver your plan. So assembling the plan, it's nice to have kind of a common template. I think, it's nice when folks are trying to review the plan, they kind of know where to find everything. So we typically organize it with a cover sheet, and I'll show you that in a minute. We put the setbacks form, it's really important, right up front to make sure that, the operator knows not to apply near that surface water. We put the maps right up front, soil test results, tissue analysis, manure analysis, and then the recommendations right behind there. You're free to rearrange stuff, but it's nice to have everything in a common template every year so the operators that you work with know where things are, and they don't have to hunt around for them. But this is kind of the order we typically use. And then any additional information we try to put in the back. If you start putting a bunch of additional information up front, it kind of dilutes the most important parts of the plan, and they're having to hunt through. Here's an example of our templates that we have on our website for cover sheets. The reason we have these templates are there's just some little details that are regulatory that should be stated in here that just aren't caught anywhere else in the, developing the recommendations. So we've put that stuff in this template. The blue text is like guidance text, and these are all available on our website in that Plan Writing Tools Handbook section that I've been talking about. And there's different templates for CAFOs with land, CAFOs without land, regular land plans, and kind of a regular no land plan situation. All right. If you need help, we are available. Myself, Dr. Rupert, Ryan. We have another specialist named Paul, and we're all available to help you guys as you're trying to learn to write plans or use the software, for example. Our website, you can either use this or just do the go.umd.edu/NMP. It's our short link. So look around there. You'll find a lot of information, and we're available. We will have I don't know if I say this here. Okay, I'll just get over this then. When you're delivering the plan to the person, make sure you explain it. You guys have put a lot of work into learning this stuff, but if it's the first time somebody's seeing a plan written by you, you want to make sure they understand everything in there, because they're the one at the end of the day that has to implement it. And if you don't spend the time explaining it to them, it might end up just sitting on the shelf and not being used. Make sure you're clear about where the recommendations are. If you've given them recommendations for, you can make these things flexible. If they don't know if they're going to plant corn or soybeans, you can put recommendations in there for both, and then they can choose. You just have to make sure they know, use the right recs for their crappy plan. So you can make it flexible. If you've given them recommendations for both manure and commercial fertilizer, make sure that's crystal clear. So they can be like, okay, here's my commercial fertilizer only recs if I don't use manure. Here's my manure recs. All that kind of stuff may seem obvious to you as the one putting it together, but when somebody's out there trying to flip through and find it, you'll need to explain. Help them stay into compliance. You learned all this stuff. You're going to pass the exam, hopefully. I'm sure you are. So you're going to know about their record-keeping requirements and what they need to come back to you. Are you going to contact them? Are they going to contact you? Make sure they know their responsibility. Help them stay in compliance. Make sure they see the setbacks that are required. All right? And if they have somebody doing custom application of nutrients, make sure they know they're also responsible for informing that person of the proper amounts to apply. They can't just say, oh, well, he applied what he thought, and, help them stay in compliance. We want to be providing good customer service to the farmers. All right, follow-up, updates. Again, communicate about these other options, the nitrate testing that's available. If they grow corn, would they benefit from a pre-side dress nitrate test? That's mostly for people who have organic sources of nitrogen, like legumes or manure, in their history. A similar thing with the fall soil nitrate test for wheat or barley fields. Can you help them calibrate their manure spreader to make sure they're applying the amount of nutrients that they think they're applying? And it seems, simple, but it can be daunting at first if you're not used to calibrating a spreader. And we have our practical experiences in nutrient management events that we have toward the fall where we give a demo about how to calibrate a spreader. So if you yourself are not comfortable with it, I have a link at the URL at the end to sign up for our email listserv, and I'll send out information about when we have those events. So come see how to calibrate a spreader. So you're comfortable with it, you can help others do the same. And like I said, this is super important. Let that person know, are you going to contact them or are they going to contact you? It's on them. They've got to contact you, but maybe it's your thing. I'll send out a reminder postcard here, or I'll email you here to remind you, or just make sure you remember to come back in the spring. Or a lot of times I like to tell people to start, if you know what you're doing, why not start in the fall? You know what you're going to do the next year. You can get your soil tests done, get going early, get people in that fall, winter timing to come in to get their plan updated. All right, so what happens next on your road to certification? So make sure you register to take the exam and pass the exam. And you'll have all the study materials. You can reach out if you have questions to us. There's further training, like I mentioned. I didn't put the practical experiences here. But once you pass, we will offer a how to write a nutrient management plan workshop. Usually we have it about September. And we do one on either side of the day. And that is to just really show you how this comes together and to use all these different pieces of software and things that you can use. And we're hoping to have a PMT workshop specifically on how to run the PMT at some point. So we have I'll make sure you guys have a link to sign up for our emails. I don't have it here, but again, here's our website. There's review questions under the additional resources tab, study materials for the certification exam. So we have in there, you have stuff on your thumb drives that are provided. Here's again what it looks like on our website. After you click additional resources, it's here, study materials. When you expand that, so this is where I'll be posting links to videos and stuff like that from yesterday. This is just what it looks like for last year. A lot of similar content last year because we're trying to teach you for the exam, right? The exam's the same kind of exam. So lots to look at there. There's some example questions. And the handbook is there as well. All right, again, how to write a nutrient management plan in September. And here it is. I knew I put that link in there somewhere. go.umd.edu/capital ANMP-email-sign-up. And I'll try to figure out another way to send you guys that link. Maybe Kendra can send it out. But then you get notice of the events, and I don't spam out a lot of events. I just really send out things that provide you continuing education credits. Because remember, once you're certified, you'll have to get those credits. Keep your certification. So that's how it goes. All right, and like I said, the training. MDA has a whole training website that they list CEU opportunities on, and I email them out as well. All right. Here I am with a big pile of manure.